The story begins with a little boy named Eric who just can't sleep at night. Worried, his parents take him to a psychologist. The doctor says maybe it's because they've just moved into a new place, but Eric clearly says no. It's because he hears strange noises at night, and those very noises force him to make scary drawings. The doctor is a little shocked and advises the family to move out of the house. But right then a fly suddenly buzzes through the room, almost like a sign. As soon as the doctor leaves, a strange accident happens. While driving, a fly crawls into her ear, making her lose control of the car. The car crashes, and at that very moment, the woman dies on the spot. Now here's the twist. Eric had already drawn her death scene in his sketchbook. Something's definitely off here. Meanwhile, Eric's father, Daniel, is busy with work when he suddenly comes across a spot swarming with flies. He thinks it's just filth and sprays insecticide, but in reality, it was a warning of danger ahead. A little while later, Eric talks to his dad over the walkie-talkie because his ball has fallen into the swimming pool. Daniel had strictly told him not to go near the pool so Eric doesn't climb in. Up until now, everything seems fine, but then the boy asks his mom, "Does Dad hate me?" Sarah, shocked, gently explains, "Of course not. Your dad loves you very much." As night falls, the atmosphere turns even creepier. Eric wakes up because of the static noise on the TV and starts listening through the walkie-talkie. Suddenly, his toy starts moving on its own. Scared, he looks down and then sees a pair of human feet. When he raises his eyes, there's someone standing behind the curtain, and that strange noise grows louder. Terrified, Eric hides under the blanket. But then, all of a sudden, someone's hand grabs his mouth. It's his father. But Eric is so frightened that he pushes him away too. Somehow his mother manages to calm the situation down. The next day brings a new shock. News comes from school that Eric has been expelled. The reason? He wasn't paying attention in class and even bit the teacher. Sarah angrily says, "Now the doctor will have to come every day." But Eric replies, "The doctor is already dead. The voices told me." And when they actually call, they find out it's true. The doctor died in an accident. Now the family starts suspecting that something is really wrong with this house. The boy keeps insisting, "We need to leave this place." But Daniel stubbornly says, "First we'll renovate the house and sell it. Only then will we get a good price." That night, Sarah again hears strange noises, and the swimming pool gate starts moving on its own. Daniel goes downstairs to check, and that's when he realizes, yes, something really is wrong here. Suddenly, Daniel rushes out of the house. At the same time, the mother goes into her son's room and sees he's not there at all. Meanwhile, as soon as Daniel reaches the gate, he finds his son's clothes lying there. He shouts his name loudly, but there's no response. Then it hits him. The pool. He runs toward the swimming pool, and the sight he sees there chills him to the bone. His son is lying there, drowned. He pulls him out, but it's already too late. Eric is no longer in this world. The next day, the house is filled with tears. The son's funeral takes place, and Sarah is completely shattered. She wants to leave the house. But while packing, she notices a dried blood stain on Daniel's pillow. Just then, Daniel enters the room and says, "We're not going anywhere. We'll only make money by selling this house." This very bloodstain later turns into a huge mystery. That night, Daniel sits alone looking at his son's old memories. He sends his wife a voice message apologizing and then tries to sleep. Suddenly, he hears strange noises. He looks back. Nothing. When he gets up to check, the TV suddenly switches on by itself. He quickly turns it off, but the noises don't stop. Then he realizes the sounds are coming from Eric's walkie-talkie. He tries talking into it, but no one responds. The next day, his wife tells him over the phone, "When I heard the voice message you sent, I was terrified. It was filled with screams and strange noises." Daniel is shocked. He listens to the recording again himself, and now he too hears the same screams. Not only that, when he plays it on the computer, he can clearly hear his son's voice crying out for help. "Dad, save me!" Now he's convinced Eric's sea death wasn't normal. Daniel goes to a professor who researches supernatural phenomena for help. The professor listens carefully to the recording and says, "This can't be fake. Why would a father forge his own son's voice?" The professor then comes to Daniel's house with his daughter. Standing by the pool, he asks, "But this water isn't even that deep. How could the child drown here?" Daniel explains that the police said Eric must have gotten stuck while trying to fetch the ball. But he knows his son was a good swimmer. That's why he refuses to believe this was just an accident. Meanwhile, the professor's daughter, Ruth, sets up her laptop and sound equipment. These devices can capture noises the human ear can't hear. When she turns on the thermal camera, she's stunned. The screen clearly shows a person sitting inside the boy's room. But as soon as she switches the camera off, the figure disappears. She tries again, and the same vision appears. The professor rushes upstairs straight to Eric's room. He asks Ruth, "Is the figure still there?" But the signal glitches. As soon as he reaches the bed, the signal returns and Ruth screams, "That man is standing right in front of you." But the professor can't see anything. Suddenly, the same strange noises start blasting through his headphones. He turns up the volume to listen more carefully, but the sound grows so loud it feels like his ears might burst. They are forced to stop the session midway. Everyone reviews the footage and agrees. This case is far from ordinary. A spirit is clearly present here. That night, the professor wakes up from a nightmare. Then he hears a voice calling his name. The sound leads him to the kitchen, where he sees his dead wife standing there, looking completely real. As they talk, she suddenly grabs a knife and slashes the professor's wrist. Professor feels the pain, but his body can't move. Luckily, Ruth arrived on time and shook him hard. As soon as he regained consciousness, the woman disappeared, and in his hand was that same knife. Meanwhile, Sarah received a phone call late at night, and the caller was none other than her own son. Crying, he said, "Mom, save me. A man is trying to hurt me. That man is the professor. I'm hiding right now under my bed." Hearing this, Sarah was left in shock. The next day, Ruth was standing outside the house smoking a cigarette when her eyes caught sight of a nearby tree. Dozens of dead cats were hanging from it. Seeing this froze her blood. Just then, Daniel came and buried them. Even the professor had never seen such a horrifying sight before. On the other hand, Sarah suddenly returned home. She rushed straight into the child's room and looked under the bed. There was nothing there. But just as she was about to leave, Eric suddenly appeared. Sarah was overwhelmed with joy and ran to hug him, but Eric instantly crawled back under the bed. At that moment, that same terrifying fly flew out. Sarah bent down to look and was stunned. On the other side of the bed, a pair of strange legs were slowly crawling up onto the bed. Sarah stood up in shock, backing away in fear, and just then a pair of unfamiliar legs appeared right near her feet. Suddenly, a hand clamped over her mouth. Meanwhile, the professor discovered a big secret. He said that the dead cats meant a witch was watching over them. This was her territory, and she had given a warning that they were intruding. Ruth then added that 300 years ago, a court was held right here, where women were executed on charges of witchcraft. But before she could finish speaking, Sarah's dead body fell from above. Daniel rushed to catch her, but it was too late. Her breath had already stopped. At that very moment, the same horrifying fly came out of her ear again. The police also arrived, but Daniel just sat there in silence. After the police left, the professor and Ruth argued. Ruth insisted they should leave now, but the professor stubbornly refused. Meanwhile, Daniel feels like he saw his wife and son inside the room. When he goes closer and lifts the curtain, both of them disappear. The very next moment, a terrifying demon attacks him. At the same time, Ruth's laptop suddenly switches on by itself, and Sarah appears on the screen. She walks out onto the balcony, puts a rope around her neck, and hangs herself. Just then, a gunshot is heard from upstairs. When everyone rushes up, they find Daniel standing like a madman with a gun in his hands. The professor calms him down, and then the three of them decide that they must end this mystery once and for all. The professor explains that the real secret is hidden beneath the old courthouse. Daniel immediately remembers. That's the same place where they had found a swarm of flies before. They dig into the ground and discover a staircase leading downward. As they go below, they find ancient torture devices. Suddenly, the professor comes across an iron cage. Inside lies a skeleton, with its jawbone strangely broken, as if the person had been tortured horribly before death. In that instant, the professor sees a vision of the woman's final moments. He realizes she was the same woman who had been accused of being a witch and burned alive. The professor says that fire is the only weapon that can defeat her. But when they go into the garage, they find out they have very little gasoline left. So they decide that Daniel will go search for more, while the professor leaves Ruth at the door and heads downstairs himself. As soon as he steps down the stairs, his flashlight starts flickering. Suddenly, two strange figures appear in front of him. One was a woman, and the other was her executioner. The man in the black hood forces a metal mouth spreader into the woman's mouth. She writhes in agony. Blood begins to pour from her eyes, and slowly her breathing stops. This was the witch's real death, and that's why her spirit still hasn't found peace. Seeing this, the professor immediately runs away. Meanwhile, Ruth calls out for her dad since he hasn't come upstairs for a long time. Just then, a woman swiftly passes right before her eyes. Suspicious, Ruth starts moving forward to look for her, when suddenly her mother appears in front of her. The mother says, "Come here, son." But Ruth immediately realizes it's fake. As soon as that woman is exposed, she charges straight toward Ruth and slowly vanishes. When Ruth turns around, the witch is standing right in front of her. Terrified, Ruth grabs a knife lying nearby. Now the camera cuts to Daniel. He sees his son's ball rolling away, and as he steps forward, the witch suddenly appears. She stands completely still. Then suddenly she screams loudly in his ear. Startled, Daniel turns back and sees his wife and child. That's when Ruth says, "If the witch isn't destroyed, all of us will vanish too." But Daniel doesn't say a word, he just hugs his family. The reality, though, is that the woman he's hugging is actually the witch. Meanwhile, the professor picks up a drum of petrol and pours it over the corpse. Just then, a mysterious song starts playing from behind. As he's about to turn, Ruth appears standing there, but he can't actually see her. Suddenly, Ruth stabs the professor with a knife. Her eyes have turned red, meaning the witch had taken control of her. The professor tries to bring her back to her senses, but it's useless. Then Daniel thinks about pouring petrol over himself and setting himself on fire. But the professor quickly pulls out a gun and shoots Ruth until she loses consciousness. After that, he fires at the witch's corpse, and it bursts into flames. Along with the fire, both Ruth and Daniel return to normal. The witch's dark magic breaks, and a fly crawls out of Ruth's ear. Ruth quickly bandages her wounded father and saves his life. But then comes a big twist in the story. Daniel goes into his son Eric's room and sees all the drawings Eric had made. Shockingly, Eric had already drawn every single event that had happened. That means the witch had made him draw it all. Seeing the final drawing, Daniel is left shaken. The truth comes out. That night when his son died, the real killer was Daniel himself. The witch had controlled him through the flies, and he had drowned his own son in the bathtub. That's why blood had come out of his ear. The evidence was clear. Unable to bear the truth, Daniel shoots himself. And unbelievably, even his death had already been drawn by Eric. In the film's ending scene, Ruth runs in, but by then it's already too late. Let me know your thoughts. Also subscribe to this channel for more horror stories like this.